Product operations is like navigating an ever-changing maze where every turn represents a decision point, where strategic thinking and adaptability are critical and crucial. The product ops professional is both the navigator and the cartographer, mapping out efficient routes while guiding teams through complex pathways. Dead ends may represent failed initiatives, while new openings are opportunities for innovation and progress. And the goal isn't just to reach the end, but to optimize the journey, making each pass-through smoother and faster. And success comes from learning the maze's patterns, anticipating its shifts, and collaborating with others to find the most effective path forward. In this episode of Product Ops Success, we're going to be talking to 4 product ops leaders from around the globe who bring their own unique approach. So you're going to be learning from people actually working in the field and not just theorizing about it. And if you are in product ops and you're looking for what I consider to be the most flexible and useful tool, check out our partner, AirFocus. I'll be sharing more info on them during this episode, so make sure you keep an eye out. We're going to be starting with the awesome Antonia Landi, product management coach and consultant. And Antonia will be laying down the foundation for navigating this maze by emphasizing the importance of creating repeatable systems. These systems act as your guiding path, ensuring that every decision is rooted in solid data and frameworks, helping you avoid the dead ends that can slow you down. Then Jerry Limber, the SVP of Product Strategy and Operations at Nielsen, is going to help you navigate the maze by teaching the value of comfort with ambiguity and the necessity of strategic thinking when faced with unknowns. His insights are the tools you need to steer clear of dead ends and keep progressing forward in your product ops career. And next up is Emma Orsi, Director of Product Portfolio Operations at Suze. Emma focuses on finding the most efficient path through the maze by improving time to market and decision-making processes. She ensures you always on the fastest, most effective route, avoiding unnecessary detours. Lastly, Holly Holbrook, a Senior Product Operations Manager at Nidus, will be bringing in the importance of teamwork in navigating the maze. Her strategies for fostering strong collaboration between product and engineering teams ensure that everyone is aligned and moving in the same direction, making it easier to avoid conflicting paths and to reach your destination. So, coming up on today's episode, misunderstandings in product ops, the importance of strategic operations, challenges in product operations, and improving efficiency, and challenges in scaling and mergers, and challenges in trust and communication, and product operations and organizational alignments. Antonia, you've been one of my go-to leaders in product ops for a few years now. And can you explain exactly what product operations truly entails and how it contributes to the success of product teams and the wider business?
So let me first start by saying what I believe product ops is, because I think, as you said, there are many different flavors of it. People have many different interpretations of the role as well. To me, product operations is really all about creating repeatable systems for high impact product work, right? Everything we do is at the service of creating a great product. And we do this by giving product teams the tools, the frameworks, and the data they need to do their job as best as they can. Honestly, I think it's the idea that product ops is something new. I think that is actually something people get wrong most often. We haven't created brand new tasks out of nowhere. That's not the reason product ops as a discipline grew or emerged. What we're doing is we are looking at these tasks that we're all doing in every single product company, and we're doing them holistically. We're doing them with intention. We're doing them strategically. I think that is the first hurdle, actually, that I often encounter. It's simply about demystifying really what product ops tasks are, right? Like if you create a bi-weekly communications template, that's a piece of product ops. If you introduce a new tool, that's product ops. They should be doing the product management work, right? They should be doing the discovery work, the scoping work. Product leaders should be doing the strategy work, the coaching, their IC's work. They should be working to deliver great products, right? And I think that's the thing that we've had a lot of discussions about. Product managers are actually holding us back. We actually need fewer product managers, etc., etc. And I genuinely believe it's not because these people are bad at their job.
Emma, can you share your insights on how product operations can enhance both the efficiency and effectiveness of product development? Specifically, how do you measure and improve key aspects like time to market and decision-making processes within the team?
And maybe actually that was the best things to start with, like what's the value and what's the positioning of product ops. I will give you two metrics for me that are the critical ones for my work. The first one is the time to market. So from the moment you get an idea to the moment it has an impact, like what's the speed of this? How fast do you move all through all the stages to like detecting the best opportunities, putting in place a solution, building the product, releasing it, and making sure it has an impact. And so like one of these metrics is this time to market. And as a product ops, you're just trying to like put greasing wheels almost, like making sure like moving to each steps can be done in the most efficient way. And then there's kind of, I look at it also as a funnel almost, meaning there's a conversion rate down like this funnel here. And the idea you're also like checking quality and making sure they can move easily from idea to opportunity, meaning they have the right feedback management system to do it. They have like a fast way to validate solution with experimentation. So you're not taking any decision. I think that's a common like understanding on product ops. We're not here to decide. We're not here to say what needs to be said. We're not here to set the release dates, as you were saying. We're just here to make sure that all of those steps can happen in the most efficient way and going to impact. So making sure like each time you can move forwards in using the most like impactful ideas, the most impactful opportunities. So just making sure you're making the right decisions. So it's I like the two branch also, meaning that it's about like doing the right thing and doing things right and doing the right thing. Meaning we help a lot, like you hear about, of course, processes when you think about product ops. So we hear we help a lot on doing things right. So like helping in the practices and the way we want to do discovery or do customer feedback or testing. And we help also on doing the right thing, meaning helping gather like the information and the evidence to base your decision, making sure the decision process is clear, making sure you're talking to the right people in the company to base this decision process.
That's really interesting. And what has been the biggest challenge or challenges in trying to implement what you've just told us?
It's often the scale of the company or where it is in its life. I had like different experience. The first one was more like this really, really fast growing company, like going from 50 to 1,500 in 5 years. And here, like each time you go to next stage, you need to rethink the way you work because you're becoming product, because there's a new challenge. So that's one of the challenges, like being able to always rethink, assess and refine the ways of working and all the things you put in place to, like, as I said, do this funnel in the most efficient way. And the second challenge I've been facing is more like merger and acquisition, I would say. So when you get like two companies together, either like this really merging and so that no one that kind of taking the lead on this, or just an acquisition also, like making sure people keep agreeing on how they want to do things, because if like part of the company is starting to use a different way to do things, it's not always a problem. Like there's flexibility, of course. I like the idea is not to have everyone doing exactly the same way. Right now I have like 3 very different business units with different needs, with different pace. So of course we don't want to have all the exact same processes, but we want to have the right ones that allow them to talk to each other, to be understandable also from the stakeholders and the rest of the company.
Now, Holly, what role does data play in product operations, and how do you balance data-driven decisions with intuition?
Yeah, so I kind of am interesting on this topic because my background started in computer science. And so I have been really exposed to the under the hood data science type of stuff. I was a DBA at times. So Ross, that was wrong for you to say. I kind of am a data scientist. Just kidding. Not even in the slightest, but I do understand what goes into it and how people need to consume it. And again, like that's kind of associated with how we were just talking about our other personas. But this is very relevant right now for me in my role at Nihilist, because and I think like a lot of other startups or mid-markets or mid-companies that aren't necessarily huge, they're not startups anymore, the data repos, they dwindle a bit, I think. And that's because it's expensive to store data. It's expensive to understand everything that your customer is using, because we have to set that in a database sometimes. And it's like, oh, well, somebody might not need to use this piece of data, so why are we paying for it? It does get hard, though, when you're working on a product and maybe it's a revamp of an existing product or a new feature within an existing product or a brand new product. There's so much data that can drive what type of changes and what type of things you want to achieve within a new feature. And that can range from feature requests, like just me and you talking, and you said, oh, I'd really love it if this thing did this thing. And that's a piece of feedback that for one day when we are accomplishing something related to that, we can take that snippet and make some decisions based off of what we've heard. But then you also have on the other end of like data is how many people are using this already? Who are our top customers? That is very important, because those are going to be the top customers that are not only impacted by the feature if you change it, but are probably going to be the most excited if you add something new. And so you need to understand stuff like that so you can leverage it in a way that is beneficial to you and your customers. And I feel like a lot of people are like, well, I'm data driven, and I'm not going to make a decision unless the data tells me I should. And I kind of disagree with that to an extent. I do not think that people should just be like, oh, well, the data says that nobody's using this, so obviously like we shouldn't work on it anymore. I think that there's also an intuition side of it that's like, people aren't using this. We've gotten 1,000 feature requests and 1 million bug reports. People want to use it. It just doesn't work good. It just doesn't hit their use case right. And so that can help you when deciding, should we stop production on this, take it back, and just like put our efforts somewhere else, or should we build it out a little bit better? And in that use case, you'll notice that it never was just the data says this, so we should do this. It's data informed with your intuition and your like understanding of the product. And I think that that's a very important piece of product work, because over and over again, I'm going to call out customer success just because they're kind of the squeaky wheel of this thing. They're the front line for our customers. And they will say, we need this product or we're going to lose a customer. It needs to do this. The functionality needs to do this. And that can happen 10 times. Maybe all 10 times is a different thing that they're asking. It's the same thing that they're asking for in different words. Using that data, you shouldn't just be like, oh, everybody is like, I need this thing to do this thing and I need it to look like this. You should say, okay, what is their problem? are they recommending we solve this, and take that and do the product outlook with it and do some discovery, understand their why, understand those pain points, and come up with a strategic solution that isn't just a prescribed, hey, do this thing. It's like, oh, they're trying to do something with a feature that doesn't really make sense for them to do it, but we also have this other thing over here. They should use that one instead. And I'm talking more in like the realms of APIs, for example. Like they're trying to hit one API to get a response that has a certain like metadata in it where it doesn't. And so they're like, I need this metadata in here. But then if you take a step back and you're like, okay, what are they trying to understand and get out of this? And it is that piece of metadata that was missing, but this API over here, it has it, or it would make more sense to use it. And then they can use that one instead. And so that kind of, I think, is a great way to think about using data. It should inform you and help guide you, but it never should be like the goal is to, not the goal. What am I thinking? Like it should never be the driving factor for what you do.
I really like how Air Focus does what Holly was just talking about and lets PMs see both the data as well as your own intuition. So if you're watching this on YouTube, you can see in this video here, Air Focus allowing you to link specific feedback to items in your backlog and then generates an insight score, which allows you to see which items are getting the most feedback from your clients. And you can bring that customer centricity into your decision-making process. It's a big deal, and one of the areas I really like about Air Focus. Now, moving on to Jerry. Jerry, could you share your perspective on what it takes to succeed in this role and how professionals can navigate the complexities and unknowns associated with it?
Yeah, it's a good question. It's actually kind of an easy question for me, though. I think the absolute biggest thing for anyone in a product operations or business operations type role really comes down to being comfortable with ambiguity. There's really no playbook here. There's really no cookie cutter solution. There's nothing out of the box that's going to save the day. It really comes down to you kind of being faced with a new problem set on a regular basis and having to kind of use critical thinking to unpack it, figure out a plan, and then execute against that plan and deliver value. And if that sounds scary, then product operations is probably not the best for you. If that sounds exciting, then like this is definitely the home for anyone that's excited by that. No, I think you're touching on like kind of a key principle that like everyone that's done any of these jobs in the real world understands, which is the nature of kind of the number of unknowns and the unpredictable nature of like when a lot of people are trying to kind of work together for a single outcome. So in my mind, product operations is kind of primarily around like defining kind of a scope of like, here's what we're going to do right, and here's what we're going to kind of standardize, and here's how we're going to measure ourselves. And then kind of turning it around and saying, look, we're not going to overprescribe and kind of dictate to teams how they're going to solve some of these other problems, because we want teams to kind of think and innovate and work in whatever way is best for them. And finding a balance between those two is tough to kind of identify on the front end through like a traditional framework or something like that. So to me, the different parts of a PDLC or product development lifecycle come down to tooling, which is, how you are kind of using tools to manage documentation and requirements and roadmaps and things like that. And then you've got governance, which is really just another name for the meetings for how decisions are made and issues are surfaced and problems are solved. And then there's artifacts, which is kind of the requirements, the expectation around requirements and the standardization around requirements, and kind of what that means in terms of collaboration across teams. And then you've got all of this built on a standardized reporting suite that kind of measures what you're doing along the way. And ultimately, if you can get everyone aligned to this way of working, then the machine starts to kind of produce better outcomes for sure.
It's really interesting what Jerry mentioned about not wanting to overprescribe a way of working, especially for teams. And this is how AirFocus uses their flexibility to do this by allowing different teams to work in different ways using workspaces. So it's again on YouTube, you can see it. And you can see here how one team prioritizes with value versus effort, while the other prioritizes with Moscow, so that each team can work how they want to work whilst collaborating across teams. So back to you, Jerry, and following on from what you've just said, where do you see professionals getting stuck the most? What would your advice be on each of those areas?
Sure. I think a lot of it comes down to maturity level of the organization in question, right? Like there's pitfalls in every single one of those that I was just describing. And a lot of it comes down to kind of where they are in their maturity life cycle and kind of what the culture of that organization is. I've worked at places that were very much feature factories. Like all they cared about was just churning out as much software as possible, as quickly as possible. And whenever kind of the product team or the tech team or really anyone involved in the PDLC would kind of present a date or present a roadmap or present like a plan, executives would just kind of show up and cross things out and say, yeah, I want it in half the time with twice as many features, go. And yeah, exactly. Like it's always just this just never ending kind of pressure to do the impossible. And of course, what ends up happening is you take shortcuts and you can do it for a while, right? You get away with it for a few quarters in a row and it seems like everything's going so great. And then, over time, as you have more and more software that has to work together seamlessly, the fact that you cut all those corners and built up all that tech that starts to kind of come back to bite you. So that lack of kind of buy-in to the process itself and the lack of trust in product and the lack of kind of space to give the teams to kind of work and kind of solve problems just kind of came back to bite that other company. And they're still trying to dig themselves out of that hole. And it's been a few years. So like I still know people that work there, and it was a very real systemic problem that was just like baked into the culture. So for example, if you're talking about tooling, one of the things that I've seen is there's a lot of companies that have a kind of very open philosophy around how people can use and interact with tools, like Jira being the one that comes to mind the most often. And every team or engineering manager kind of has their own special workflow and their own kind of space that doesn't really kind of work well with the other spaces. And there's no standards and there's no kind of consistency. And so if you try to zoom out and get an understanding of what's happening across the product portfolio, it's literally impossible to do at scale, right? Like the only solution for it is to throw bodies at the problem and hire a bunch of program managers to run around and ask everyone like what the status of something is, right? So when you operate at a larger scale and you need to kind of solve these things systematically, you need to kind of build in certain kind of a groundwork of standardization that everyone follows that, is frankly guardrails that then you can build kind of scalable like reporting off of to really kind of fully leverage your underlying tool set to get value. There needs to be predictable places where people can go and look and find answers. So another example of where people get tripped up on the governance side is meetings, right? Like meeting fatigue. So if you have a matrix organization where there's, for example, a like foundational data set or a foundational set of tech teams that kind of work on things that ultimately impact multiple products, then when you try to start kind of having meetings about individual products, those tech leaders are going to end up getting invited to, a lot of meetings. And it just ends up resulting in like meeting fatigue. And it turns into like this very kind of inefficient set of conversations that kind of relitigate the same things over and over again. So that's like another example of where when that happens, there's a need to kind of be overly prescriptive or kind of get creative in terms of ownership. So having like better asynchronous communication methods or finding proxies that can kind of show up and be subject matter experts in areas that are kind of outside of their traditional purview, is a way to kind of like help release some of that friction from the system. And then just kind of being efficient and thoughtful about how you're designing meetings. So in the context of these meetings, you'll have like a bi-weekly meeting that's focused on individual products. And then if you zoom out a little bit, there's a monthly meeting that might focus a little bit more on an entire product line. And you zoom out a little bit more, and then you do kind of a quarterly meeting that's focused on the entire portfolio. And the idea here is that each step of the way, you're kind of summarizing the information a little bit more, making it a little bit more accessible for a more and more senior audience. And you're trying to kind of repurpose the same information in different forums so that it's at least efficient with people's time. And then there's things like standardized notes in like a predictable location, other stuff like that, that just kind of tactically helps people stay plugged in if they can't actually attend a meeting. One of the areas that I've seen the most kind of pushback or lack of buy-in tends to be artifacts, right? So generally speaking, people hate documentation. They hate the process of writing things down. And, everyone would prefer to just kind of like get a meeting, talk about it, and then hope that everything happens. And, in really small companies like startups I've been at, you can kind of get away with stuff like that. And even, when you're still operating at a fairly small scale and there's just a very small number of decision makers and dependencies, you can get away with that. But as you start to kind of grow in terms of the scale and interdependency of different products and solutions, you really have no choice but to do a better job of thinking things through before you start building, thinking through things like architecture and interdependency and interoperability and risk. And like you have to make every decision through the lens of scale and kind of the impact of what you're doing in terms of like the larger ripple effect across the organization. So artifacts like that are standardized can really help as a source of truth for bringing people together around like, here's what we're trying to do here. Here are the outcomes we're pushing for. And this is what the solution should look like. And it's the way to kind of bring that to life is generally just over communicating, like running boot camps, running trainings, and having leadership push it also. It's not enough for like product operations, just kind of shout it from the rooftops. It has to come from a top-down mandate. And if the leaders are bought in, then everyone else will ultimately get in line. And as people start to feel the value of when they do this kind of thing, then it really starts to move the needle in terms of like shifting behavior for the whole organization.
Okay, and to Emma, what are some common challenges and pitfalls you've encountered in the system, and how have they affected the overall process?
Okay, so yeah, what I learned and seen like this collaboration and communication networking is it's really about trust. So like if, for example, your customer success team doesn't trust like that you're going to share with them the right information, doesn't trust that you're taking their feedback into account when you're making decision, they won't be as like efficient, I would say, in supporting and working with the client here. So I think that's where like communication and collaboration really becomes critical, because you really want to make sure that all the parts of the organization are aligned and working with you to make the product a success. And yeah, and as I was saying also, I think that more like internally to products and tech organization, it can become really complex also if you have like a merger or an acquisition. And then there's like a lot of different way to do things, and it's okay until a certain point, I would say. You don't want to have everyone doing exactly the same thing. You need to cater to maybe different needs in different teams depending on what they do. But for me, I put the limit to like when it becomes unclear actually to the rest of the company or to end users, and they need to figure out and feel like your organization outside your organization. So organizational like specificities are okay as long as they don't surface back to the rest of your stakeholders and customers.
As we conclude, Holly, What key strategies have you found most effective in fostering strong collaboration between product and engineering teams?
We don't want our engineers writing product concept docs or product requirement docs. We need them to be able to understand those product requirement docs. We need to have a good relationship with our engineer manager that's like, here's what we're trying to accomplish. Here's the outcomes. Here's the acceptance criteria that the product manager owned, because they are the expert of what they are trying to build. And they did all of what we were just talking about. They looked at all of the data. They made critical decisions. They tried to come up with the best solution with what resources they have. And the next phase, is to get alignment from the engineering team, so you have confidence that they can execute it according to the outcome you're driving. And hopefully, if you do that right, like there can be like an initial conversation about it. And then if they have questions pop up here and there, hopefully the docs that you've created will help them, or you're having a stand-up every day and they can say, hey, what did you mean by this thing? Did you also want to include this provider or this cohort of people? Like some nitty-gritty details. But you're totally right with like, you shouldn't have to babysit your engineers. You should know that your engineering team and you are aligned enough that they know what they're supposed to do, and you are confident in that. And I think that is something that I love most about being in product ops, because I sit on a layer above product teams. Not that I'm their manager or I'm their boss or anything, but I don't own their products. I look at it holistically of like, they're achieving these things in their verticals and their engineer teams are doing these things. And I get to get the whole picture kind of how communication is flowing throughout those teams, how maybe one team does better doing async daily stand-ups because they're all over the world, or because like they're so busy right now, or whatever it is. I can like find a understanding of how our teams work together and how information is flowing between them and then between the rest of the organization, and help them optimize that so they do have that stronger relationship with confidence in each other. With engineering and product, like when I first got into this organization, they had never had a product operations team. And we honestly, it was a little bit chaotic because we were the perfect size where there was a lot of people, but not enough people, but like everybody was doing different things and it was hard to juggle. And so one of my first tasks was to understand what our product development lifecycle is, like how information flows from one team to another to keep a cohesive start to finish. This is how we should do things, because one team was doing it backwards and the other team was doing it from top to bottom, and everybody's looked a little bit different. And so if you went from one person to the next, they had a different idea of how they were supposed to go about their day. And that was a night and day difference. And I'm not even taking all the credit for myself. All I did was ask them, like, what do you see and what do you need? Like in each of these pieces that we are talking about, what do you expect from your team? And that helped us really get a cohesive, we are all in alignment that this is what we need from product at this time. With that information, we're going to do this thing. And that's something really cool about product operations, I think, is because I could look at it as a whole rather than a PM is like, oh my God, my team is like struggling with this thing. We need to do a new process. It's like, hey, as an engineering, product, and design org, this is how we're going to move about our day-to-day so we can do it easier together. And we've since kind of moved from like siloed work pods to universal. So like, I need this expertise of this engineer for this feature. that engineer can at ease go over there and understand how communication is given and execute just as if they were on their standalone team. Yeah, I think that product ops is on a cool level to really see the overlaying problems, you know?
So now, with the insights and strategies shared by our guests, you've got the roadmap to navigate the maze of product ops successfully. Now, whether you're facing unexpected challenges or striving to optimize your operations, you're now equipped to find your way through and achieve your goals. And if you haven't checked out AirFocus yet, and you're passionate about product ops, you're definitely missing out. So check it out at airfocus.com and let me know what you think. I'd love to hear from you. Be sure to stay updated with our guest insights by following them on LinkedIn. So from me, Ross Webb, until next time, and from our partners, AirFocus, bye for now.